Alright, so here we are with our 3-5 notes for Algebra 2. We're talking about graphing polynomials to analyze something called end behavior. So, basically what you want to be able to do with these types of problems is be able to look at an equation and kind of visualize what the image would be without actually having to have it graphed. So, some interesting pieces of a polynomial is going to be this end behavior idea. So where does it end? Where does it start? And then kind of identifying what shape it is. So taking a look at what we have here, they want you to graph this piece. And so we're going to graph that and then actually identify a few things about it, which will then be able to tell us without having had to graph it. And so actually, before I graph it, I will confirm with a graph. Alright, so first we're going to identify the leading coefficient. So if we look at what we have here, our leading coefficient is this value way out here. Okay, there is technically a 1 there, it's the thing with the highest power. So officially, -1 is our leading coefficient. It's not there in the 1 sense, but it is there. So, turns out if this number is positive, which it's not, but if it happens to be positive, the graph ends upward. Alright, if it's negative, as it is here, turns out the graph is going to end downward. So as I think about this graph, what's going to happen is as it goes through whatever it's going to do, it will end going down. Alright? Just based on that number out front. Then we need to identify the degree. Okay, so if we go ahead and identify the degree, it's the highest power, so that's a 3. Alright, and so what's going to happen is, if this is even, which it is not, the start and the end behavior match. Alright, and if it's odd, as it is, the start and end behavior are opposites. And so what's that telling us about this graph is that eventually it will have this start of going upwards. Alright. So then we get to kind of put this into a new notation. So we're not going to talk about ends and beginnings and all of that stuff, because the way that we note what is happening at the end versus what is happening at the start, or what we call the left or the right, is this notation here. So as we read this, this is saying as x's go to the negatives, well, here's our x's, and they're going towards the negatives, what does the y value do? Because remember that p of x in this case is y. So what does the y do? It goes up. So I'm going to write that in here. Let's see how it is as the graph goes left. So again, that's what this piece is saying. As the graph goes left, the image ends up or down. If the image ends up, what's going to happen is you are going to answer this as infinity. And if it ends down, you're going to answer it as negative infinity. So taking a look at what we have, as it's going left, it's going up, and so our answer is going to be infinity. All right, the next one is kind of the same notation, but now notice that we're saying as x goes to infinity. So we're actually talking about going this way, so positive numbers. So we read it again as the graph goes to the right. One more time, the image or the graph itself line is going to end up or down, and again up is going to be given as infinity and down is going to be given as negative infinity. Alright, so we kind of already know the answer to that one as well. Again, as it goes to the right, it's going down, so negative infinity. Alright, and so in order to prove that we are going to have this happen, we're going to go ahead and graph. So all we need to do is plug in these points. So I'd plug in a -5 in for that value there. Plugging in a -5 can be done quite a few ways, but the easiest way is to get out a graphing calculator, type it into your y equals, and if you type it into your y equals, you can then use your table. So best way to do that, especially with whole numbers. If you are not familiar with that technique, of course, you can always just plug in a -5. So I plug in a -5 here. And so this first piece, order of operations, gives you, let's see, 125 for this first piece. For the second piece, we'll have 25 times -4, so -125, or sorry, -100. And then -5, and then +4. So if you put that all together, 125 minus 100 minus 5 plus 4, we end up with 24. And so you could see that maybe you would want to use a calculator to get to 24, because then you don't have to do all of those 4 steps for every single one of these. So on that note, putting it into a calculator and using the table format, we're going to find that that's 0, -8, -6, 0, 4, 0, and a last one of -18. Alright, so if we go through and plot these, let's see, we're going to go -5, 24, which is really not going to be that helpful visually. Then -4, 0, so that's here. -3, -8, so -3 down, -8. -2, -6. There it is. -1, 0. 0, 4, so over nothing up 4. Over 1 up 0. And then 2, -18, so down here somewhere. And then -5 is up here somewhere. So as you can see, it does end up, right, this dot down here, and it does end following this dot down here. And then it's got all this fun stuff in the middle. And it does kind of just make like this N shape, or this snake shape. So following the dots that we've made, we've got ending up, or sorry, starting up, kind of going down up here, back up again, and then down again. So as much as I kind of gave estimations at the beginning there of where it would end, this is kind of more of what it would actually look like. So again, still what we call starting up and ending down from left to right. Alright, so that is what you're going to be expected to do on your assignment. So on your assignment, you're going to be given an equation, identify the leading coefficient, and then tell me what that means. Does it end up or down? Tell me the degree, and then what does that mean? Does it end up or down? And then you can fill in that idea with your negatives and positives. So you don't actually have to graph it. You just need to identify those properties. And then at the bottom here, you're going to end up saying if the degree is even, odd, or if the leading coefficient is negative or positive. So kind of backwards. Look at the image and tell me what the equation might be.